Ririsa was explaining to Mikari that Masamune was actually helping her make a costume while showing an example. Mikari was shocked, imagining someone in revealing cosplay clothes being photographed and sold. Mikari then asked if Ririsa wasn't embarrassed to do it. Ririsa replied that she was actually embarrassed, but her determination to express her love for Liliel was much greater. Hearing that, while looking at Ririsa and Masamune, Mikari realized there was an easier way to make Masamune fall in love with her. Ririsa then asked Mikari if she wanted to cosplay together with her. Masamune was already pessimistic because Mikari is a supermodel. But Mikari confidently replied that she wanted to do it. In her heart, Mikari thought she would do anything as long as there was a chance to make Masamune fall in love with her. Besides that, she also had to keep an eye on Ririsa. Mikari recalled when she asked Masamune if he liked someone or not. Mikari realized that there was a pause before Masamune answered. It was different compared to before. Mikari thought that Masamune, who was a hardcore otaku, must have misunderstood and liked Ririsa because he saw her cosplaying as Liliel. Therefore, Mikari decided to use cosplay to win over Masamune before Ririsa did. Ririsa then said that she wanted Mikari to cosplay as Muriela, Liliel's team and friend. Ririsa wanted them to cosplay together with her as Liliel. Mikari didn't want to accept this. She wanted to cosplay as Liliel herself. However, Ririsa insisted that Mikari was more suited to cosplay as Liliel. Mikari got a bit annoyed and pulled Ririsa to the corner of the room, covering her with a whiteboard. Mikari told Ririsa that Masamune liked Liliel, which is why she wanted to cosplay as Liliel. Ririsa was puzzled, but of course, Mikari couldn't reveal her true reason. She then said it was because she liked Liliel. Hearing that, Ririsa beamed with joy. She understood and conceded to Mikari. Ririsa then took off the costume she was wearing and handed it to Mikari. Mikari could see Ririsa's chest clearly. She went blank for a moment, then turned around and said she would be Muriela instead. Of course, Ririsa was confused. Then Mikari directly asked Masamune if he liked Muriela. Masamune firmly answered, of course, because Muriela was very cute when she teased Ashford while competing with Liliel. She was an innocent girl who, despite knowing her love was unrequited, still sincerely loved Ashford. Her slim body and cute face, along with her flat chest, were favorites among otakus. That's why she was an unforgettable character. Masamune then said that Liliel was his waifu, while Muriela was like his little sister. Mikari thought that she didn't want to be Masamune's sister, but at least Masamune thought that Muriela was sexy and cute, so maybe Mikari still had a chance. Ririsa suddenly approached Mikari and offered to take her measurements. She would buy the materials after school. Ririsa mentioned that she also made all her costumes herself. After getting and noting Mikari's measurements, Ririsa said she would finish the costume that very night. Of course, Mikari and Masamune could only gape in amazement upon hearing that. The next day, Mikari came to school and went to the manga club room. As soon as she entered, Ririsa, who was sewing, asked for permission to measure her chest again. Naturally, Mikari was confused and asked who she was. Masamune, who was reading a comic at that time, said that she was Ririsa, the one cosplaying as Liliel yesterday. Ririsa had stayed up all night sewing and even brought her sewing tools to school to finish it. Mikari then realized that Ririsa was her classmate who had been sleeping during lessons. Ririsa then remeasured Mikari's chest more carefully. Ririsa wanted to make a costume that truly matched the depiction in the manga or anime. She even paid great attention to the details of the stitching and contours. Ririsa was eager to bring the details from the 2D world to the 3D world. Hearing this, Mikari was very impressed with Ririsa's dedication. She realized that cosplay was more complicated than she had thought. Finally, the costume was finished. However, Mikari was shocked when she saw the result. She thought the costume was too sexy. Mikari even refused if there were any requests for a photoshoot in a swimsuit. Ririsa then showed the costume she was going to wear. It turned out to be just as sexy. Mikari thought it would be very dangerous if Masamune saw Liliel in such a sexy costume. In her heart, Mikari didn't want to lose. She reluctantly agreed to wear the costume and wanted to win over Masamune before Ririsa did. The two of them then changed clothes together in the corner of the room, covered by a whiteboard. They helped each other put on the costumes, including the wigs, socks, wings, makeup, and so on. Finally, they both finished putting on the costumes. Mikari looked in the mirror and still wondered if Masamune would want to see her like this. Mikari realized that her usual self wasn't enough to make Masamune notice her, so she had to change. Wearing the costumes, Mikari and Ririsa walked towards Masamune, who was reading the manga. Masamune looked up at them. Mikari was dressed in the Muriela cosplay, while Ririsa was cosplaying as Liliel. Seeing them, Masamune seemed struck from both directions and immediately collapsed. Masamune then praised Mikari, saying she now really looked like Muriela. Mikari blushed hearing this. It was the first time Masamune seemed happy to see her. However, Masamune's gaze remained on Ririsa, who was cosplaying as Liliel. Mikari understood this because Masamune really loved Liliel. Seeing this, Mikari realized that she actually hated the manga Masamune liked, but somehow she couldn't hate Muriela. In the manga, Muriela fell in love at first sight with Ashford when he saved her. She tried several times to attract Ashford's attention, but her love was unrequited because Ashford trusted Liliel deeply. Although she eventually became friends with Liliel, she still couldn't express her feelings. Mikari felt that Muriela was somewhat similar to her. Without realizing it, Mikari said, "Why won't you look at me?" Masamune and Ririsa looked at Mikari surprised and said that she sounded just like Muriela. They even knelt down, unable to believe that Mikari could say Muriela's most popular line so perfectly. For Mikari, the happiest moment was seeing Masamune looking at her with such delight. Mikari then posed and asked Masamune if he liked her. Masamune firmly said that he liked her very much. Of course he was referring to Muriela. But that was enough to make Mikari happy. She had been in love with Masamune for 10 years, and this was the first time he expressed that he liked her. Mikari was very grateful. She decided to cosplay. Ririsa then showed some pictures of Muriela and Liliel poses to Mikari. Mikari was surprised that she had to pose like that for the photoshoot. However, Mikari reluctantly agreed to do it because she didn't want Ririsa and Masamune to do it alone. Masamune prepared himself to resist temptation while photographing them by imagining himself as Ashford. The first pose Ririsa wanted to do was Liliel performing healing magic on Muriela by holding her chest. It was their most iconic interaction. They both tried to do the pose. Mikari hesitated, but when she glanced at Masamune, she saw him very enthusiastic. Ririsa started by touching Mikari's chest. Mikari's face turned red immediately. Ririsa was very pleased, thinking Mikari's acting was excellent. Masamune said that Liliel mentioned that transferring magic power was accompanied by a comfortable feeling. He also said he managed to capture a great expression. Now it was Mikari's turn to transfer energy to Ririsa. Mikari did it to Ririsa by holding her chest. Masamune, who was watching, couldn't take it anymore. He started having a nosebleed and was bleeding a lot from his nose. Seeing that, Mikari felt jealous, making her want to get magic power from Ririsa again. But as she was about to move, her foot got tangled, causing her to fall on top of Ririsa. Mikari tried to separate herself from Ririsa, but couldn't because something was stuck. Ririsa then asked Masamune for help to separate them. Mikari also wanted Masamune to do it because she didn't want Ririsa's costume to be damaged. Masamune gathered his courage and stepped towards them. Ririsa asked Masamune to pull the hook under her armpit to separate the front and back parts. Mikari was actually worried because if that part came off, their costumes would also come off. But Masamune, under pressure, did it. Sure enough, the costumes came off their bodies. Seeing their bodies, Masamune had a massive nosebleed, causing him to fall back. Mikari and Ririsa could only watch him with concern. Evening arrived, and Masamune, Mikari, and Ririsa had changed back into their uniforms. Sitting together, they talked about their favorite manga. Masamune was thrilled to know that Mikari still liked reading manga, so they could chat and have fun like this. Hearing this, Mikari realized something. All this time, she had focused too much on making Masamune like her, but had forgotten to try to understand what Masamune liked. Now Makari was convinced that Masamune was not happy because she looked like Muriela, but because Makari could also like his favorite manga, and cosplay had brought Makari into the world Masamune loved. Ririsa then thanked Makari because, thanks to her, she could now create the costume she wanted. But Makari apologized to Ririsa because she was still under contract as a model, so she couldn't publish the photos they just took. Of course, Ririsa was very shocked and sad to hear that. But she understood. Ririsa was also delighted because it was her first time cosplaying together. Makari left the manga club room. In her heart, she would take it slowly. Until one day, Masamune would like 3 dimensions too. After Makari left the room, Ririsa mentioned that she had already gathered the materials to make the costume. She was very eager to create the costume and then attend a cosplay event. It turned out that Ririsa had already registered for a cosplay event next month. Now they only had a little over a week to edit the photos, process them, and create a website. That very night, they stayed in the manga club room. Ririsa had brought her laptop, and they had to choose the best photos from each pose according to the costume concept. They needed to input the photos into an application, perform color correction, and retouching. They had to repeat this process for 500 photos. Of course, Masamune was very surprised, but he wanted to give it a try first. The process turned out to be very time-consuming. Each photo took about 5 minutes, so for 500 photos, it would take 41 hours and 40 minutes. Ririsa looked hopeless, but fortunately, Masamune didn't give up and encouraged her. They were talking too loudly, which made the school security guard suspicious. He knocked on the manga club door, asking if anyone was inside. Masamune and Marisa tried to stay silent. They hid in the corner of the room, with Masamune covering Ririsa's mouth. Ririsa felt very nervous because Masamune was too close to her. The guard searched for the key to open the manga club room, but fortunately, he couldn't find it and left. They felt relieved and Ririsa blushed, touching her lips. She felt calm because Masamune was there to protect her. They then continued working to complete the costume together.